Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 20th of July of 2024. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, we have significant changes on the ground, so let's start. Considering Kherson direction, Zaporozhye area and Vremivka tactical bridgehead, as you can see we received significant number of geolocations, but we will not talk about them, we will not discuss them in details, because they show just regular military activity without anything important and without any changes on the ground. We're gonna start this discussion of the evening video with the reports and updates that are coming from Vuhledar directions, because this is the first area with very important details and updates. Today the Russian sources published the video from Donbass coal mine number 1. In this video, for example, we can see the movement of Ukrainian vehicle that was entering the coal mine territory, where the Ukrainians were trying to hide this vehicle from Russian artillery forces or Russian FPV drones. But of course the Russians managed to discover the movements of Ukrainian forces and they attacked the vehicle and destroyed it. So from this perspective we might say that there is nothing special, nothing important in this video, just a regular military activity. But I would like to point your attention that since the beginning of the special military operation, of course correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first video that shows us the Russian FPV drone strike already on the territory of the coal mine, of this coal mine. Furthermore, I believe that now the Russians are able to do this because during the previous days we were talking a lot about the Russian breakthrough. If you remember, just yesterday, the day before yesterday, the Russians published 2 videos of how they were trying to attack the Ukrainians along this road towards the O524 supply road between Vuhledar and Konstantinovka. Furthermore, some mappers adjusted their maps and added this territory under complete Russian control, and some mappers adjusted their maps and added additional fields for positions that used to be under control of a 72nd Mechanized Brigade. And as I understand, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions even further in direction of the coal mine, and now they can reach and attack this territory with FPV drones without any risk of being jammed by electronic warfare of Ukrainian forces. And this is very important because this video confirms that most likely the next Russian target in this direction is to establish complete control over this coal mine. And if the Russians are able to do this, then they will create something like a semi-encirclement of Vuhledar from the southwest, from the southeast, from the south, from the east, and from the northeast. Furthermore, the Russians will be able to establish complete control over the landfill, the highest point in this direction, and then the days of Ukrainians in Vuhledar would be numbered. So probably this is exactly what is happening right now. At least the Russians are trying to test the Ukrainian defense inside of the coal mine, and if the Russians understand that they can do this, they will try to do this, and they will try to create a cauldron, of course, or to force the Ukrainians to fall back. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Georgievka Maximilianovka direction. Today we got just one video that was published by 46 Air Mobile Brigade of Armed Forces of Ukraine. In this video we can see another Russian attack, how the Russians using 2 or 3 armored vehicles were trying to capture addition another stronghold in this direction. The video was published by 46 Brigade, and most likely that attack was repelled, at least according to the video. The Ukrainians managed to destroy Russian vehicles and to force them to fall back. Anyway, after a very long operational pause that had been taking place in this direction for the previous months or even more, the Russians resumed their attempts to capture and to maintain the line of combat contact, at least along these 3 lines. So this is, let's say, the first target of the Russians, to force the Ukrainians to move further inside of the fields. Now let's move to Krasnohorivka. As you can see, we have adjusted the map and we have colored significant part of Krasnohorivka under complete Russian control. Today we got 3 videos from this direction. 2 of them are very important. Let's take a look at the most important video. In this episode we can see Russian tank that was moving along the street in Krasnohorivka. Russian tank reached the Nahimova street, and from the most edge of the buildings of the street the Russians began attacking and bombing the Ukrainians that were located very close to the tank, so within a very short distance. The Russians, after the Russian tank was empty, the Russian Russians returned back, turned the tank, and returned towards the base. And the Ukrainians haven't managed to do anything to the Russian forces. This video confirms a lot of things, and the most important that the Russians captured significant territories, or at least they managed to encircle the Ukrainians inside of the park territory or inside of the Krasnohorivka citadel. Now let's return back on map and let's discuss once again. The Russian tank was moving along Kalinova Street. The Russian tank reached Nakhimova Street. From this position, the Russian tank was attacking the Ukrainians around, and when the tank was empty, the Russians turned the tank back and returned towards the to the main base. So this is the road, so this is the way how the Russians were moving and were acting in this area. And based on this video, I believe you follow a lot of mappers, and based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps and added this territory under complete Russian control. Furthermore, we have another video from this direction that was published by the soldier of 59th Motorized Brigade, which is responsible for defense of this city. And this soldier was talking with commander using the radio. He was talking with the commander. Basically, he just turned on his radio and ask his friend to make a record of this video, and both soldiers were just listening to what the commander of 59th Brigade was telling them. And telling the truth, this is a very difficult video because the commander was telling them to stand on their positions, not to surrender. Otherwise, if they surrender or if they fall back, he will come to the line of combat contact and he will basically kill them all. And also during this conversation, during that dialogue of a commander of 59th Brigade, the soldier made his own statements and he reported that everybody left them, everybody abandoned their positions. Most likely a lot of significant number of forces of troopers of 59th Brigade were encircled in some parts of Krasnohorivka. Another important statement: we have adjusted the map and a lot of mappers have done the same, but you need to understand that there are a lot of basements, a lot of buildings, a lot of constructions where we can still find Ukrainians who are hiding from the Russians, who are trying to find how to break through the encirclement and how to evacuate from this part of Krasnohorivka towards the northern or northwestern part of the stronghold. So this is the current situation in Krasnohorivka. Now let's move further. And let's talk about western Avdiivka area. There are very heavy clashes in this direction. As for Progress, Vovche, Voshod, this square, we got just mappers update, and most of the mappers have adjusted their maps, including pro-Ukrainian deep state. But the only difference is that according to pro-Ukrainians, the Russians control just 50% of Progress, but according to pro-Russian and neutral mappers, the Russians establish complete control. Furthermore, the Russians improve their position in the fields between the cities, between this artillery pocket, inside of this artillery pocket, forcing the Ukrainians to fall back further and further to the western direction. Now let's move further. We have additional video that confirms Russian control over this tree line. So the Russians during the previous 24 hours or maybe earlier improved their positions. We just received video today, but probably this event took place earlier, so additional tree line was captured. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Toretsk, New York agglomeration. As you can see, Toretsk is under very heavy fire. The Russians are bombing this territory with everything they have, with FAB 3000, with multiple launch rocket systems, with stealth flamethrowers, with FAB 1500, with FAB 250. The city is under very heavy fire. The Ukrainians suffer significant losses, but they continue sending more and more reinforcements and reserves to this agglomeration with the purpose to slow down and to stop the Russians. But as we can see, these actions conducted by the Ukrainians don't help them to stabilize the situation. The Russians are moving and the Ukrainians are falling back, suffering significant losses. And today we got few important statements and few important geolocations from inside of this agglomeration. The first geolocation, the first post or icon is coming from the coal mine and the terracon of the coal mine, the southern. According to different mappers, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to capture and secure this terracon and landfill completely and to force the Ukrainians to fall back. For now, we still haven't received any geolocations that can confirm this. Most likely, we're going to receive some very soon and then we will adjust the map. Very interesting video is coming from inside of the citadel, of Pivnichny citadel in the central part of the city. In this video that was published by the Ukrainian forces, we can see the video of a very close dagger combat between Russian and Ukrainian forces. The Russians and the Ukrainians were fighting for, let's say, from one building to another. So like sometimes in some episodes the distance between the Russians and the Ukrainians were less than 10 meters. And the most important part of this video is the final seconds, this one. In this video, for example, we can see how the Ukrainians were running away, and in this video we can see how one Ukrainian soldier was attacking behind him, the building that was behind him. So this video was geolocated and this event took place here. So the Ukrainian soldiers were running away from the building that located on the Unity Street number 17. So this is 17th, building number 17, and the Ukrainians were running in the southern direction towards the next building. So this is approximately the road of Ukrainian, let's say, evacuation or withdrawing their positions. And one Ukrainian soldier got his position here, and he was attacking the upcoming Russian forces who were also moving from the building number 17. So based on this geolocation, we have adjusted the map. Approximately, we have colored these buildings, these high-rise buildings, under complete Russian control, and we left just one building under Ukraine control. So as I understand, this building also probably was captured already by the Russians. The Ukrainians during this episode of the video were using this building as something like coordination point or something like evacuation hub. They were controlling this territory for those Ukrainians who were trying to evacuate from this area towards the mainland in the western direction. So this is the situation in Toretsk agglomeration. As for Chasiv Yar, during the previous 24 hours we received the same situation as in Zaporozhye, Kherson, just regular military activity, significant number of FPV drone strikes and nothing more. The same story is about Razdolovka, Siversk direction, just one report from pro-Ukrainian mappers that confirms complete control over this territory by the Russians. Also, the Ukrainians stated that the Russians established control over the farms that located in the northeastern part of the village. We have adjusted the map a little bit in Kremenная forest. More and more videos we start receiving from this direction, mainly from the Russian side, of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces along Seversky Donetsk river on, let's say, Russian side of the river. And in this video, for example, we can see even not just artillery strikes, but also we can see the movements of Ukrainian soldier in this part of the river, in this part of the islands. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map. And I'll remind you that this area is under the responsibilities of the 12th Special Purpose Brigade Azov, and during the previous months, June and July, they managed to capture significant territories exactly inside of the Kremenная forest, and probably the Ukrainians currently try to create another defense belt and try to create evacuation and supply roads exactly through the forest and in direction of Siversk, because now the main supply roads that goes from Grigorovka and Serebryanka are under complete Russian fire, so the Ukrainians try to improve the roads through the forest from these three villages along the river. Now let's move further, and we're coming to one of the most important updates from the northern Kupiansk direction. Today the Russian sources published two videos confirms complete Russian control over the villages of Avdiivka, Mesozharivka, and over the village by the name of Southern Stelmakhovka, Southern Pishane. In this video, for example, we can see Russian soldiers who captured Avdiivka completely, Rozovka, and how the Russians raised their flag above one of the buildings in this area. Based on this video, most of the mappers have already adjusted their maps or about to do this. So this video confirms complete control over this territory. And the same Telegram channel, the same Russian source, published additional video from the village of Southern Pishane. And in this video we can see some park, central park of the village, where another group of Russian forces were raising the flag in the vicinity of the former Soviet soldier who was probably liberating this territory during the Second World War. So this like central park of this small settlement. Both videos confirms complete control over this Avdiivka village and over Southern Pishane as well. And now we have no doubts. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map, and according to this configuration of line of combat contact, the distance between the edge Russian positions and Kaslinovka village is already less than 8 kilometers, less around 7 kilometers. So this is already nothing for Russian artillery strikes. This is already nothing for the Russians, maybe even FPV and drone strikes. And this is significant progress. And this progress also confirms and gives us explanation about the Russian focus and targeting in this area with artillery and aviation. Today we got additional batch of videos of how the Russians were pummeling this territory with everything they have. And as I understand, after the fall of southern Pischane, the Russians entered the next phase of a Kupiansk offensive operation, and very soon they will try to establish complete control over Stelmachovka. This will allow the Russians to maintain the line of combat contact at least along this line, and then from this line the Russians will try to launch full-scale offensive to the river of Oskol. Now the Ukrainians suffer significant problems with logistics, and the entire direction can collapse very fast under very heavy Russian pressure. As for Kharkiv direction, during the previous 24 hours we got significant number of videos that show us how the Russians continue reducing the city till ruins. The Vovchansk is under very heavy fire. The main purpose of Russian attacks is to force the Ukrainians from the northern part of the stronghold to fall back towards the southern part, which will allow the Russians to establish control along Vovcha river, which will allow the Russians to release forces and to send them on other directions or to begin clashes for the southern part of the city. Very heavy clashes, as you can see. As for changes on the ground, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything that can confirm additional progress either of the Russians or of Ukrainian forces. Northern Liptsi direction, there is the same situation, with only difference. Some Russian sources reported that as a result of short counterattack, the Russians restored control over the trenches and the fortifications that are located to the north of these farms. So this small block was recaptured by the Russians. The Ukrainians continue sending more and more forces in the northern part to Gluboka, but the Russians see everything and they bomb heavily the main residential part of the northern Liptsi with very powerful aviation, with the purpose to reduce Ukrainian reinforcement reserves and their possibilities to counterattack the Russians. So as you can see, the situation is very difficult, and if you see another day in a row, probably fifth or sixth day in a row, or maybe even more, we receive every day significant updates, significant geolocations of additional Russian progress. We see that Ukrainians can't stabilize the line of combat contact, but combat contact currently is not the only problem. We have more and more videos, more and more updates of how Ukrainians began strikings, began some actions, some events in different towns and cities, forcing the Ukrainian authorities to change their attitudes to the special military operation and to start following and watching and resolving problems of people, of poor people all over the entire territory of Ukraine. We continue receiving more and more updates of some guerrilla warfare in Ukraine. More and more people start showing resistance to the Ukrainians who are mobilizing them. We continue receiving more and more videos, and probably this is not the final episode. This is not the final day of resistance of Ukrainians against Ukrainian authorities. So everything, to my mind, is coming to a civil war. Is coming. Zelensky is not able to hold the power forever. Most likely, now the situation is that a lot of people who were against war were mobilized and sent to the line of combat contact. They were trained, they got weapon, and this can lead to something unpredictable. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.